Airey Neave was an eminent backbench Tory MP. He was respected for his gallant war record and for serving as a lawyer at the Nuremberg trials. He believed the Britain he had fought for was being destroyed.
During that period, the 70s, Airey Neave undoubtedly felt, as many of us did of that generation at that time in the House of Commons, that the values which saw us through the war were slipping away, in the same sense as it was all under threat when we fought our war.
I think the thing was that we'd been through a war, and I think we could see the dangers more easily than those who hadn't.
I
think this was the thing, really. I think this is why perhaps we were more prominent than others, trying to make people realize that these were very real dangers which existed.
Neave was not alone. Many of his generation had a romantic picture of Britain. Its history was somehow different from the rest of the world. This Britain, they were convinced, had to be defended.
Well, we knew that Great Britain had led the world morally. We had always been the moral leaders of the world, I think. And our values were the right values, and it seemed to us that the wrong values were being imposed. In other words, thuggery instead of common sense and things like that. And we wanted to combat it.
Some of the Colditz generation even set up private militias, a network of retired military officers who would take over the running of the country if law and order collapsed.
I think it has to be available just as we had a home guard during my war. We need people there to fight or do whatever is necessary, build boats, drive cars or trains, but be available in any form of emergency.
I've never been very good at pushing myself in matters of this kind, and just out of the blue, Airey came to me one day in the House of Commons and said, have you got anyone organising your campaign? I said, good heavens, no. Organising it? You don't push yourself. It's a matter for other people. And he said, well, I think I'd better take it over then, don't you? And I said, well, I'd be delighted. Just like that.
Now, I understand that you ran a very discreet campaign, what's been described as a kind of Colditz campaign on behalf of Mrs. Thatcher, so that Mr. Heath's camp didn't really know what had hit them until it was too late. Is that true?
I think it's entirely true. I think it was very important with a new candidate when the establishment of the Conservative Party were organising in support of the leader, which was very proper for them to do, that I should run a very discreet campaign among the backbenches. And we did this quietly and discreetly. It resembles Colditz in the sense that one had to be careful what one was doing.
She won it, and on the second ballot she won it. By which time she and Airey Neave had become great friends. But he was another kind of, not an icon figure exactly, but totally sympathetic to her political philosophy.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Now, I suspect what he saw is something very close to, again, the values which we've been trying to describe. Margaret Thatcher was someone who appreciated the greatness of this country and believed in it. Airey Neave felt that she held the same views of patriotism which he believed in himself. I think he saw that in her. And he was right.
For me, there is no choice. I do not intend to be the first woman Prime Minister of a mediocre and declining Britain.
Chris Patton and I were working on a speech for her in the room actually overlooking the car park. It was in the opposition leader's set of rooms. And we were working away, and there was a sudden bang, and I looked up, and Chris said, I think that was a bomb. And I said, oh, I don't think so. It was probably a car backfiring. Well, it was a car, but it wasn't backfiring. Chris pulled the curtains to rapidly and said, don't go near the curtains. It is a bomb. No one knew who it was, but then they checked the registration number, and of course it turned out to be Airey. She wasn't there at the time. She'd been off opening a fete somewhere out of London.
As soon as you could, I got 2 minutes here, someone being killed in the Belmont Clinic. I'll come and talk to you. Just now, 7 minutes ago. I want to talk. We don't know yet. terrible news, Mrs.
I don't know about it yet. I'm just it's only been
All we know is that there's one dead. I'll talk to them. Let's have Sure. Yes, in the car park. I'll come from the car park. I'll find it. I'll try and find out what I can from my...
We're on the one road, sharing the one load. We're on the road to God knows where.
Airey Neave had been assassinated by the newly formed Irish National Liberation Army. When Mrs. Thatcher appointed Neave opposition spokesman on Northern Ireland, he had promised tough new measures if the Conservatives won the general election. The political wing of the INLA was the Irish Republican Socialist Party.
Neave would have been a person of who would have been perceived to have been a considerable threat, and would have been perceived to have been somebody of, if he had ever become Secretary of State, would have transformed the situation. A person who was saying things about the Irish people, about internment, about bringing back the death penalty for people engaged in what he called terrorist acts in Ireland. Then, of course, he suddenly became a person of some significance in Ireland. He appeared, anyway, on the face of it, to represent that new force in the Tory party, that kind of reactionary view of a lower middle class losing its base of support, losing its power, attempting to grasp again that element of power that it felt it should have had, that it perhaps felt it was entitled to after the Second World War, which I think perhaps Margaret Thatcher certainly represented, and perhaps manifested itself to some degree in this new heroic figure that was presented to the Irish people in the shape of Airey Neave.
You know, people remember him for a lot of things, perhaps most of all for the fact that he got out of Colditz. They don't remember him so much for the many kindnesses he did. Really a person, a wonderful person, of tremendous inner strength. And just one more thing. Some devils built him. And they must never, never, never be allowed to triumph. They must never prevail. Those of us who believe in the things that Airey fought for must see that our views are the ones which continue to live on in this country.